Welcome back from an alternative timeline where instead of being the face of Bethesda Softworks, Todd Howard was perfecting synchronized dance routines in a boy band. Meanwhile, in our own timeline, Bethesda is busily working away degrading their own titles. This is happening much more actively with Fallout. Shh, don't worry, as I speak I'm sure a small deployment of Bethesda devs are perfecting the Elder Scrolls 6, while half of you shrugged and went, yeah, the Earth also revolves around the sun. A bunch of you just yelled out, are you out of your mind? Have you seen the new Fallout TV show and the recent Steam charts? Why yes, I watched the player count skyrocket, and then plummet faster than Spider-Man freefalling after Mary Jane for the 90th time. Concurrent players on other platforms, no idea. To explain what I mean, let's travel back to the summer of 1970, the decade when John Travolta found fame, and Pong came out on the Atari console. In this same decade, on a cool summer evening in the sleepy town of McCungy, who comes up with these names? No one that speaks the King's English, that's who. In this sleepy town, a sleepy little fella named Todd was brought into the world by two loving parents. Then the doctor said, "You're a shot, motherfucker, and nobody likes you."
I'm sorry, that was mean.
Let's go ahead and skip forward to the day when Todd Howard walked over to Bethesda's offices looking for a job, only to be promptly told to shove off at least 3 times. The first time because he hadn't finished school, the second because they had no vacant positions left. Following rejections were most likely out of annoyance from his constant persistence. Eventually, in 1994, Bethesda relented, sitting Todd down at his very first workstation. Everything was going swimmingly at first. I'm not sure what happened. He spent his days at Bethesda climbing the ranks and ingratiating himself with fans through memorable clips like this one.
I'm gonna make video games and everyone's gonna play them. Like, you dork. Go back to the chess club.
He's just like me, for real!
The man was operating like a well-oiled machine, until it was discovered that upon close inspection, beneath this adorable exterior, exist 7 weasels, meticulously trained to exaggerate the truth to the very limit of human standards. So what comes out of Todd 2.0's mouth isn't quite a lie, but can be nudged out of context just enough to be considered lies. That way we get funny videos to enjoy. It's easy to believe that once upon a time, this leather jacket-wearing enthusiast probably did have a fire in his belly for his craft. After all, he held key positions at Bethesda during many beloved releases, from the Elder Scrolls Daggerfall, Morrowwind, Oblivion, and Fallout 3.
Dragons, I'm not overkeen.
In the year of our Lord 2002, Bethesda released the game everyone's heard of and most folks are too terribly terrified to even play. Yes, the Elder Scrolls Morrowind, the abject horror. A game that showed me the Dhamma are f***ing racist.
You Inma.
Some men never wear shirts. No, not even in digital art. When I eventually worked up the courage to play Morrowind, what happened first was the journal sat me down and taught me how to read again.
It's going to be okay.
Also features a spell creation system. Ever wanted to throw fire while simultaneously casting weakness to fire on the same target, then combine both effects into one spell? Has an NPC ever gravely offended you?
Annoying Outlanders.
How dare you, sir? Clearly, the only way to deal with this unsightly individual is to descend from orbit or while raining down fireballs on the Enwa, swooping down just in time to capture one last snapshot to remember them by. Talk about being free to become the ultimate supreme being known as Wizard.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
Oof, yeah, maybe the system could have been reined in just a bit. Thanks to faction restrictions, it's not possible to become Todd Howard's global superstar. So sad. Ever found yourself living on Tatooine, only to pick up a mirror realizing, I'm a blinking wizard. I should be living in one of those big mushroom houses. So you take a jaunt over to House Giovanni, only for them to slam the door in your face. In the city of Mournhold lies the Tribunal, comprised of 3 immortal godlike Chimer. Powering them is the heart of a god that a practically extinct race of lanky dwarfs happened to find under a volcano. While that may sound crazy to some of you, it's certainly a major improvement over Bethesda rehashing the past. One feature that does bring me joy though is that I can take out story-dependent NPCs. Sure, the world is doomed now because of me, but it was my choice, and now I get to live with the consequences. We used to call that accountability. Morrowind, a peak RPG, forget about all other peaks. Small disclaimer, peak RPG in the Bethesda-verse. What I truly love is the sheer freedom you're granted, from the freedom to think to the freedom to explore. There is so much potential here for Bethesda to expand on in future games. It's easy to imagine players who first experienced Morrowind sitting there wide-eyed wondering where Bethesda would take them in 20 years.
Wait.
Before that, however, 4 years post Morrowind, Oblivion came roaring out of the gate. Releasing on PC, Xbox 360, and eventually crawled out to the PlayStation 3 a year later, with a rather impressive trailer starring the bald man from those X-Men movies as the voice of Emperor Uriel Septim. After I got done making my character look absolutely gorgeous, I was just about to start my adventures when...
Wake up, kitty kitty. That's it. There's a rat in my cell.
And he was apprehended by the guards. A handful of players may not know this, but the Imperial Province boasts the fastest on-foot police force in history, complete with some rather beefy psychic abilities. By this point, Bethesda clearly made liberal use of streamlining, which can be a useful process simplifying parts of a game that are more complex than they need to be, whether that be the user interface or technical optimizations that reduce loading times, kind of like how sensible people now speak English instead of Latin. One example that boggles the mind is the removal of Longblade for Red Guards, renowned for their martial prowess, which is part of their culture, especially their expertise with yes. If you said blades, you win a prize, ding ding. Here, enjoying this Kajiti picture. BT dubs, are you aware that Daggerfall was the earliest Elder Scrolls title to use fast travel, and in a slightly more interesting manner than today's video games? Fun fact. Anywho, after jailbreaking out of Roman-inspired Alcatraz, failing to save Captain Picard, had to perish because, good lord.
Do you know what he was doing to the budget?
The developers hand you access to every major city with a single click. Okay, fine, 2 clicks. You've got to put up the map. To their credit, Bethesda did realise their mistake, never reusing this specific implementation in later titles. I could go into a long-winded breakdown of how unlikely it is for your character to survive long enough to play map quests and get themselves thrown in the local pokey. Remember, this world is packed full of monsters, dangerous wildlife, and oh yeah, dangerous gods obsessed with cheese. When your character can barely defeat low-level goblins and giant rats that bust down walls like Gunter Schabowski. Besides, the most logical reason for the main character even attempting a tour of the Imperial Province comes after your encounter with Tiber Septim, when you received the call to adventure in the first place. From a design perspective, it's going to be far more enjoyable for players to discover these locations themselves. Fast travel already discourages exploration enough, so that falls flat. Further hammering the point home, if Bethesda thought instant fast travel to undiscovered locations was such a great idea, they had the perfect opportunity in Fallout 4. The protagonist, after spending time as a human popsicle, has no idea where a single location is, with buildings mostly intact and visible landmarks dotted all over the place. For goodness sake, according to the map, Nate doesn't even know where his house is. Oblivion carries over the Spellmaker from Morrowwind. Spoiler, Todd gives up on this system and guts it utterly from the next game in the series, and we bid it due to classes, which is a real shame. Oh, and if you're feeling generous, please subscribe and help me get to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. The quality of writing is consistently inconsistent. Let's take a look at a couple of quests, starting with Who Done It? A standout for me, I enjoyed this quest a lot, because it's not just filler designed to waste your time. The premise is genuinely engaging. You're instructed to eliminate 5 guests locked inside a manor house.
Do you like parties? Because you've been invited to one. Of course, you'll be killing all the other guests. Are you ready to attend?
What makes it special is the freedom in how you approach it. You decide the order of eliminations, and your interactions with the remaining guests shift based on your choices. You can even manipulate them early on to suspect you less. While the mechanics are fairly basic, the concept is undeniably clever. Layered on top of all this, you can acquire a piece of gear from a previous job in the Dark Brotherhood questline that will be of great benefit here. You can tell the writer really sat down and thought this one through. Then we have the quest A Brush with Death. The idea of using a magical paintbrush to enter a painting in a world where magic is already present is brilliant. So brilliant that I wouldn't be surprised if it went on to inspire later quests, like the Painted World in Dark Souls and the Witcher 3's Painted World. Unfortunately, during Oblivion there's no real follow-through. What could have been a fascinating exploration of an artist's inner world ends up feeling like a mundane chore. Enter the painting, have a brief chat, fight some trolls, fetch the magical paintbrush, leave the painting, and that's all. It's a wasted opportunity that falls short of its potential, leaving behind little more than mediocrity. Oblivion was the first Bethesda game designed to appeal to a more mainstream crowd, while still delivering a decent experience. Sure, certain mechanics were simplified, which is not always a bad thing. Having said that, there's the flip side, oversimplification. I reckon if Bethesda, after simplifying certain mechanics, had filled in other areas like meaningful player choice that has an effect on the world around them, they would probably be in a much better position today. Did you know that only 2 years earlier, Bethesda entered into a licensing agreement for the Fallout IP with Interplay, the creators of the Fallout franchise? And what happened in 2008? Yes, that's correct. Bethesda launched their very own Bethesdaized version of Fallout. Welcome to Fallout 3. The game was a hit. Players liked the VAT system and the ability to explore a vast post-apocalyptic wasteland. At least that was the idea. The game features iconic staples from Mr. Handy to comedians with a hankering for Buff-Out, not forgetting Power Armor. Initially selling 4 million copies plus generating over 300 million in Mustcoin. One day that'll be a real currency. The game's also responsible for Bethesda's massive ego, decrepit writing, and the cementing of Todd Howard's minimalist design philosophy. In fact, the way Todd and Bethesda designed games brings to mind an artist from the 1980s. Called Patrick Nagel. If you've ever stepped foot into a salon, there's a chance you've seen paintings of these ladies, commonly referred to as Nagel women. Patrick Nagel's women were created in a minimalistic art style. They had just enough flair and colour to catch the eye. Their designs were intentionally simple, leaving room for the viewer's imagination to fill in the gaps. This approach played a significant role in their widespread appeal, making them not just artwork, but a canvas for personal interpretation, a key factor in their iconic status. Todd's not watering down his games only with necessary simplifications and accessibility in mind. No, amongst other marketing strategies, he's also trying to Patrick Nagel as many potential customers as possible. At least that's what I've observed. After being birthed into the world of the freshly minted 3D Fallout, I quickly realised my dad's a cognitively impaired, far less capable version of Liam Neeson.
I will look for you. I will find you.
Wandering around my 10th birthday party, being told I'm a good boy by most people present. Oh, I may not be able to get you now, Butch, but I'm a patient man. Eventually I escape the vault, then and only then my character Hono Pachichu is ready to... Was the sky always this green? Who did the colour coding for this game? Bruce Banner?
He shoved my DLC in my face.
Where's the sandbox located in Washington, D.C.? Now, a less charitable man may suggest that DC's recognised born was far easier for Bethesda to reconstruct, rather than creating entirely new post-apocalyptic settlements from scratch. Fallout 3 taught Bethesda many lessons. For instance, people enjoy exploration and going pew-pew, even with space lasers. This is also when they stopped caring about making interesting games that may not always maximise profits, but instead they started making lunchbox experiences. Everything you need to keep you going, no more, no less. If you're lucky, you may get a banana thrown in. Amazing. Wait, I'm not done trauma bragging about my daddy issues. 5 minutes from the vault, I came across a town full of lemmings.
And children of the earth, come forth.
Instead of having people be awesome, why not have them be dumb?
I can't quite put my finger on it, but I wonder where they got that idea from. Trust me, this is for the best. Bethesda has a long-running problem with how they handle NPCs. An example I'm always going to talk about is during the Waters of Life quest, when you're tasked with entering Project Purity to clear out the Orlando Greenbacks, so dear old daddy can move in to do the science.
Yes, science!
But that's really boring, so let's recap my daring escape with Dr. Lee, down the tunnel of love. Oh, come on, Doctor, this is no time for a power nap. What's really funny is no matter how many times this happened, at the end of our trip, Dr. Lee gives me a recommendation. Outstanding bodyguard service, would recommend. So obviously, I'm not the first to point out Bethesda's reoccurring plague of essential NPCs. Skyrim really highlights how bad this is. So many NPCs have God mode enabled, even when it makes zero sense. Half of them never go anywhere, while the other half should be at risk of dying. Why am I even here? Fairly certain we had some relatable words that would fit in nicely. Wait, I remember. Urgency, stakes, realism. You'd think that Bethesda would account for this in the future. No, they're never going to do that. Fallout 3, an easily flashable game. A shame when it had the potential to be a great RPG. How do I know this? Because I've played it. You probably have too. No, too early. Shoo. While Bethesda was busy working on The Elder Scrolls V, they needed another game to fill the gap. A game that to this day still remains undefeated as their best title.
War never changes.
Yeah, of course it's New Vegas. So in 2008, Obsidian began development. Luckily, they had a few older looking fellows that already had experience with the IP on board. Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, they took what people already loved about Bethesda games and what fans of the original Fallout games enjoyed, smashing both together, creating a greater son from a lesser sire. The factions were written with more care than most Bethesda titles, and the way they're integrated into the world is really effing cool. Personally, I've got a soft spot in my heart for the Legion. Sure, they're awful, but a lot of fun to join when you get tired of playing as a good guy. After getting banged by Matthew Perry, you stumble out of Doc's place meeting the citizens of Goodsprings, who unlike the people of Megaton have a good reason for living here. Yep. I did what was best. Depending on your personality, over at Nellis Air Force Base you may meet some like-minded individuals. If you happen to hate change so much that your first reaction to anything new is to blow it up with heavy artillery, then again maybe you're like me and all you want to do is return to work as the Mojave's most dedicated postman. You fool, Chandler Bing, did you really think this light to moderate injury would slow me down? Where's the Lucky 38 again? Oh, there it is. Package from Mr. House. No, not that one. Yeah, that one. Well, crap. It's not my fault, okay? I've been assured many times by Bethesda that a situation like this could never occur. Honestly, I feel kind of bad. Maybe I should get re-evaluated by Doc Mitchell.
What do you see?
I, like many, see how Obsidian fixed one of Bethesda's longest-running failures: essential NPCs. With the stroke of a pen, you can wipe NPCs off the map and the story marches on without missing a beat. The writing team accounted for varying outcomes, and in doing so, they breathed life into a world that, at its core, is just a bunch of ones and zeros, all while racing against the clock with only 18 months to work with. New top-shelf Vegas is so awesome that most people would ignore the rough edges. Instead, they peer out over the Mojave wasteland, wondering what could have been if Obsidian had more time. Perhaps the eternity is taking Todd to develop the Elder Scrolls 6.
You do still make video games, don't you, Todd?
No, I said video games, not whatever that is. And re-releases don't count.
One day I'll stop and I release the perfect version.
People like you don't stop. You can rationalize it however you like, but you
Re-release Skyrim because you're greedy.
You're maladjusted and you need help.
And yes, I am glazing New Vegas right now. That's only because I genuinely believe we're stuck living in some bizarro universe, instead of the main universe where Obsidian is the AAA studio, leaving little Bethesda trailing behind. Now, seeing as every being with a pulse on planet Dirt has already praised FNV, nothing I can say will really do the game justice. And since nothing beats the experience, look, if you haven't played it, you should. The year is 2011. Bethesda just dropped their flashiest game yet. It's got your prophesized hero trope. Technically, too, they crammed in the prophecy of doom as well. Legendary dragons, new people, and a new land influenced by Viking and Scandinavian culture. Add to that an impressively beefy soundtrack, topped off with the iconic voice of Chief Justice himself, Max von Sydow. That's probably how you pronounce his name, right?
And when the truth finally dawns, it dawns in fire.
Each of these elements were designed to work in harmony, capturing your attention from the very first drumbeat. This trailer is a crash course in exceptional marketing, one of Bethesda's undeniable strong suits. What else was released around April of the same year? Wow, what exceedingly fortunate timing. An epic fantasy show arriving just before Skyrim hit the shelves. It's as if the very fates had conspired to draw the public consciousness towards the grim, the medieval, and the fantastical. I'm sure none of these factors had any influence on the staggering 650 million generated in revenue, or the 10 million copies of Skyrim that had shipped by December. When it comes to the 5th Elder Scrolls entry, I'll gladly give Bethesda props for how they carved out the world, creating more diverse landscapes. A marked improvement over Oblivion's endless hills. A shame the same can't be said for Skyrim's minuscule cities. They're all a terrible downgrade from Oblivion's. Look how spacious these areas are. Forget about districts. I could pack an army of elephants in here. Real estate is far from Skyrim's only issue. And for every good aspect, there are plenty of parts that just suck. Like, I don't know, how about the beginning of the game? Oh great, I'm stuck on a cart. Well, time to walk to the local shop, grab a packet of jammy Dodgers, box of tea, and a lottery ticket. Dear lord, we haven't reached the end yet. Skyrim's cart ride is an unnecessary time sink. I guess there was no other way to introduce Ulfric, destined to get an arrow in the back guy.
Halt! You're not gonna kill me! Archers!
And possible red shirt guy number 1, topped by a big black dragon, whose wings appear to clip through the wall. After you escape the Disney ride, you're still stuck going in one direction. Sure, the game pretends you have to make a choice here. Do you go with possible red shirt guy 1 or 2? Only to exit Helgum with Hadvar, dashing across the map over to Windhelm, where you join up with the Blue Boys instead. You can argue that losing access to Ralof or Hadvar is a cost, except neither of them are of any importance. You can't even recruit them as basic followers. They're designed to be disposable, like most NPCs in Bethesda games. In fact, that sense of disposability is woven through almost every choice the game offers. Much like Ralof and Hadvar, the choices you're presented with rarely feel impactful, reflecting the shallow decision-making that has come to characterize Bethesda's approach. Kinda like the rather dull dragon combat. After a while, whenever a new dragon would come flying towards me like a piece of candy, I'd be left with a single thought running through my mind. Hello? Soul Eater delivery. Admittedly, I've spent mucho grande spans of time playing Skyrim, so I'm not about to sit here and pretend I never had fun adventuring through the world of the Elder Scrolls V. What I will tell you is that much of that enjoyment is provided not by Bethesda, no, it's from my own imagination and the dedicated modding community, who are constantly serving to some degree as every Bethesda game's life support. If there's one part of modern game design that drives me up the wall, it's what I'm about to go over next. Give me 1 second, let me locate. What's up, Ayala? Any idea where I should? Oh, thanks. Luckily, I have this incredibly evident quest marker to take me by the hand and lead me all the way to the objective. Is it here, Todd? Are you sure the Elder Scroll is here? I just want to be absolutely sure. Don't take this the wrong way, Todd, but if I wanted someone to hold my hand, I'd call your mum. Don't worry, I'm sure Bethesda are going to improve upon this in the future. Brilliant. The door is a door. Thank you very much, Todd. Ooh, shiny. You've probably noticed how the majority of quest markers in Bethesda games, whether they're arrows, squares, or even tilted hexagons, lead you to dungeons, which if you stop to contemplate,
that just makes no fucking sense.
These games pride themselves on being open world, so why don't Bethesda spread more quests out across the world? I mean, I'm just saying. They should also level up their world building, like maybe give the guards the guidebook on how to properly deal with mages in long-term confinement, so I can't do this. And that's why they call me Captain Sparklefingers. If only they spent a smidge longer thinking things through. Now let's assess another security situation, Skyrim's barrows. Honestly, even a blind man could break in. All he'd have to do is feel around. Do I find amusement picturing a Draugr shuffling around in there wearing a maid outfit? Yes. And I find books like this one far more compelling, if the rest of Bethesda's puzzles weren't equally mind-numbingly simple.
And you just happened to guess the password to the secret door.
You mean the railroad?
So it starts with R?
If a multi-billion-dollar company can actively encourage you to think less so they can profit, then they absolutely will. Just the other day, I was strolling through the woods when I stumbled upon a cave. As I peered inside, a thought struck me. Wow, the loot system has really stagnated. The contents are mostly the same generic items you can find scattered throughout the game world, contributing to a sense of sameness, with some exceptions.
A new hat.
Fallout 4's junk building economy must have been an absolute nightmare for players who had no interest in building. Another problem is that you often acquire more loot from unlocked chests than you do from locked ones that require extra time and effort to open. Not that much more effort, but still. What incentive do players have to fill out one of the least useful skill trees in the game? Bethesda made a similar mistake with Starfield, increasing the lockpick difficulty without providing better loot as a reward. I don't know why oversights like this keep happening. It's almost as if, somewhere during development, they experience a logic gate failure. Then again, surface level improvements like this fit Bethesda, and Starfield genuinely feels like an experiment, where Todd and the boys wanted to see at what point exactly would their fans start to jump. Fallout 4 launched in 2015, shipping 12 million copies, earning Bethesda $750 million within 24 hours. I swear, 80% of Bethesda's development team really work in marketing and sales, not actual game development. The most handsome man in showbiz, Ron Perlman, returned once again.
You know where I'm going with this.
Well, you would if not for Todd's quirky sense of humor. This time, Bethesda had no prophecy nor dragons to rely on, so they pulled out their ace in the hole. Who's a good boy? You're a good boy. Yes, you are. Sorry. The graphics hold up even today. Visuals is the one area where Bethesda have chosen to focus more attention.
A lot of people do visual things, because it's the easiest thing to do first.
Hey look, the writer for this game is Emil Pagliarero. Didn't you write Fallout 3? You wouldn't partially invert the game's story into its follow-up title, would you? No, surely not. Is this a huge deal? Not really. I just find it amusing. I wonder what Fallout 5's storyline's going to be. Will you be your brother's second cousin twice removed, who's forced to leave the vault after that same cousin because he ran off with your sister cousin? At least Bethesda improved the gunplay. I guess that's good. They got their projectile weapons to function like they should in their FPS game. Anyone here into Bethesda's gimmicks? Then there's no way you've missed settlement building. You can dedicate hundreds of hours building up settlements across the map, which can be entertaining for a while. But even that had to be fixed by Bethesda's very forgiving modding community. Sadly, it does absolutely nothing for the core game. Before someone starts typing out an angry comment, you know I'm right. The only time settlement building is tied into the main story is when you need to tap into the Institute and help build Optimus Prime. Imagine if constructing and defending outposts was part of the main gameplay loop, providing tangible benefits. Now tie that in with missions, giving you the opportunity to push back against each group attacking your settlements, all leading up to a final confrontation where you're presented with various options on how to handle them. I thought that up while I was throwing my socks in the washing machine, so maybe it's not that airtight, but still, sounds more interesting to me. Besides, for a game set in a post-apocalyptic world, endless waves of enemies feel bizarrely out of place. Quite the boom going on around here, an inexhaustible parade of foes constantly harassing your settlements. Todd and his radiant quests. If you're still not convinced, guess I'll go take a plunge in the river. I may as well, it's one of the fastest ways my character can soak up some rads. No, I am not commuting all the way over to the glow. The conversion rate over there is pathetic. 3 rads per second, come on, what a disappointment that place was.
The glowing sea? That can't be right. No one would risk going there.
What makes the glowing sea so dangerous?
The name says it all. Radiation, so much that nothing there could possibly live. Nothing pleasant. Navigating radioactive hazards is nothing new, but the glowing sea can kill a man in seconds.
Stop the cap!
Bethesda have never been known for their top tier combat, apart from shoving in good FPS. Pause. Did you just try and block my hammer with your arm? For real, melee combat is non-existent, consisting primarily of swing and block. Worse, you're limited to striking one enemy at a time. I thought this game was developed post Skyrim. Don't worry, I'm sure combat will be improved upon later. Me, is that an animation from a 13-year-old game? Now, I would really like to know why every legendary enemy type in the game mutates, especially the humans. How does this mechanic work exactly? Do they clap their cheeks together to get a second wind? Shouldn't Raiders combat aid be centered around the turbocharged Coca-Cola they carry around in the form of chems? Mutating super mutants makes some kind of logical sense, but for the love of Spider-Man and anime, just because you can spam legendaries into every enemy pool doesn't mean that you should. And packing enemies full of HP before sending them out to serve as nothing more than glorified damage sponges is nothing new. Most developers fall back on this trope, with only a few exceptions managing to break the mold. Bethesda's not one of them. For anyone gearing up to comment, but you can just work your way up to a better arsenal. Let's stop pretending that justifies such heavy reliance on an overcooked trope, especially when Bethesda can't even get the scaling right. Just look at this nonsense. Who's approving this lunacy? Here's a wild thought. How about having the threat from Homo sapiens stem from their intelligence, then equipment like armor, followed by readily available trusted performance enhancers? Not as if any of this is difficult to figure out. Why do you think we're the most dominant species on Earth? Then again, maybe we have become too comfortable as a species. Almost forgot, and tools. Shovels, for instance, we are really good at using those. Bethesda displays an expected lack of creativity, piling yet another layer onto the obnoxious sponginess of regular enemies. This approach feels especially odd, considering there's already a more fitting example of spongy enemies in the game. Yes, the almighty crab. Forget about their fancy names for a second, soft shell, razor claw, whatever. Take a good long look at Mr. Krabs over here and ask yourself, what does this guy remind you of? If Walking Tank just popped into your dome, congratulations. You've already outpaced Todd Howard in deductive reasoning. Shockingly, this is actually good enemy design from Bethesda. If you're wondering why I'm so pumped about these oversized crustaceans, it's not because they're inherently awesome. No, it's simply because they're so intuitive. Definitely makes me wonder though how Bethesda look at these extraordinary creatures, then proceed to add secondary health bars to so many other enemies. Okay, fine, I may have included a few as a joke. Now that I think about it, no, I don't wonder at all. Bethesda designs everything with simplicity in mind. The majority of their enemies are so bare bones that it's easy to imagine them being procedurally generated. The main storyline is absolute dog water. The initial premise is terribly unfit for an exploration game, having to hunt down your missing son while stopping every 5 minutes to help out complete strangers. And once you finally reunite with Sean, he's developed this bizarre obsession with being called Daddy. The writers were clearly going for this whole I'm emotionally detached from my parents vibe. At least they spelt his name correctly. And he sure does enjoy yapping about how the Institute raised him, though you never get the opportunity to meet the specific people he's referring to, thanks to Bethesda's disdain for fleshing out their content. It just never really comes together. I mean, he makes you leader of the Institute due to nepotism. Unfortunately, the juvenile writing does not end with Sean. The Railroad.
Oh god, those kooks.
Are one of the most poorly written factions. Their entire existence hinges on the writer's awkward attempt at making you ponder whether synths should be treated the same as humans.
Aren't synths just machines? And machines are tools.
But if it's impossible to tell a single difference between a synth and a human, they must be treated the same.
Only one? Well, firstly, these are not naturally created life forms. They are only alive because a group of crackpot scientists cooked them up in a lab. They don't age, you can shut them down with a voice command. Let's not forget their predecessors include Gen 1 and 2 Sims, who are literal machines. Gonna make for some painfully awkward family get-togethers. Their memories can be wiped and rewritten, giving them entirely new personalities. I don't care how exceptional your Dr. Freud is, that's not possible with humans.
Who are you? My name is Jeff.
Beyond that, imagine if Sean at any point during your wasteland adventures had chosen to reach out to you first.
Oh, before I forget, let me see that Pip-Boy of yours. I've been told to install a Courser chip in it for you.
I found a Courser chip. Can your people decode it?
You have what? This is not a joking matter.
Yep, Railroad is an impregnable faction. No plot holes here. Followers feel half-baked. Bethesda clearly took cues from different games, including New Vegas, but failed to expand on what others had already achieved in any meaningful way. Romances are awkwardly shoehorned in, existing purely to add content rather than depth. Companions never feel like they have any real stakes in the world's events. Their exploration lines repetitive and predictable.
What the hell is that awful stench?
Oh, and this is cute. Kate, why are you wasting water? Let me put something to you. If you were a game developer planning to include both companions and functioning elevators in the same game, wouldn't you want them to work together seamlessly instead of turning it into a minigame where you have to wrestle your companion into the elevator just to avoid the inevitable jump scare of them suddenly appearing inside midway through the ride? Although, what bothers me more are these incredibly awkward moments that occur whenever your follower interjects mid-dialogue between you and an NPC.
The Brotherhood cannot allow those abominations to have a nuclear arsenal at their fingertips.
Super mutants with nuclear weapons? Not gonna be able to sleep at night knowing that.
Now, we have a vertibird on standby.
Unless it happens during a scripted event, the NPC you were just talking to shows no sign that they even acknowledge your companion's existence. Never mind the fact that they just rudely interrupted your conversation. Just one more thing. If you're like me and brought Best Girl Kate along to the Brotherhood's 4th of July event, wasn't it trippy when you set off the Institute Buster? And she showed less reaction than your favourite vegetable. Not even a... Maybe she's a simp as well. Stretching believability a bit, aren't we? Often in video games, a silent understanding exists between the developer and the player. Certain absurdities and out-of-place events will be overlooked. Don't worry about them, they're walking off, but that can only stretch so far. Fallout 4's NPCs land in this painfully awkward middle ground. I'm saying they're mid. In previous Fallout games, players could acquire stimpaks as a means of healing, which Bethesda carried over. That's fine and all. I simply wish Todd hadn't left crippled status in such a meaningless state. And I don't say that lightly, given how much I already dislike stimpaks being the go-to solution for healing. I'm experiencing flashbacks to Resident Evil Village's Jesus Juice over here, while others were surprised at how badly stimpaks were implemented into the TV show. Clearly, they forgot how much Todd enjoys removing content. The year is 2023. A mix of games graced our screens, from charming exploration titles like Dredge to JRPGs like Octopath Traveler 2. Even Cyberpunk had its redemption arc. And the greatest RPG any of us has experienced in a tremendously long time finally landed in my hands, closing off the year. Well, I mean, in a perfect world, that would have happened. Enter Starfield, a very pretty game, no doubt. Whoa, just look at that spacesuit. Unfortunately, the game is rampant with procedural generation. Over 1,000 procedurally generated planets. Let that marinate for a moment. A cold, unfeeling algorithm churned out world after world, with only vague instructions on the why behind it all. Why is this world here? Why did it shape the land in this way? Why does this creature belong on this planet? How does the ecosystem function on each of these worlds? If you ask the mighty Starfield Generator 2.0 for answers, it would obviously respond with, because that's what the boss fed into my cold, empty cage of a brain. I don't know about you, but I have no interest in playing games primarily designed by an automaton. I want to play games made by thoughtful, creative individuals who possess a genuine passion for what they create. Not procedural generation that churns out bland, forgettable oatmeal. Using it on a massive scale is bonkers. All that does is turn everything into an easily forgettable blur. Hey, remember that planet with the, the thing? Yeah, me neither. The staggering ego on this man is plain to see in his passion project, which he couldn't stop himself from inflicting upon millions of people. Everything we've gone over in this video is just a taste of why I have awarded Bethesda the title McDonald's of the gaming industry, because that's exactly what they are. Think about it, as a company, Bethesda holds over 30 years of game development experience, while positioned in exceedingly profitable circumstances, and yet Starfield was the best they could achieve under the leadership of Todd Howard. Strange, no? Perhaps not. Like I touched upon earlier, I consider Starfield to simply be the nth degree of what a Bethesda game is, and it's completely understandable how we got here. We see how highly Todd's games are lofted up, in an industry that acts akin to an Ouroboros. If you were endlessly praised and showered with gold, wouldn't it go to your head too? With no shortage of profit and adulation, there's simply no incentive to reflect or innovate. Why change a winning formula, even if it's been diluted into mediocrity? All this time, Bethesda's been marching backwards. They don't make great games.
They don't.
Todd Howard is not a creative genius.
He's
And as long as people keep throwing money at them, Bethesda are perfectly content pumping out a steady stream of mediocre content, all while gleefully milking their fanbase dry. So good luck ESO players, Fallout 76 enthusiasts, and inevitably the poor souls of Starfield Online. And hearts out to all my single player homies out there. Hope you're prepared to wait even longer for single player experiences, as Bethesda shifts more focus toward multiplayer games, microtransactions, and paid mods.